And then I realized that a lot of times what I would do, and I think many people do this, especially the ones that are in self-development, I would distract myself from the actual self-development with consuming
Mm-hmm.
self-development. We connect with realness. We don't connect with perfection because we know that we are not perfect. You can't fake years of self-growth, self-development, working on yourself or your skill
Mm-hmm.
set or whatever it is that you have worked on, instead of I need to learn more so that I feel ready to start. You will never feel ready to start something you never did. I signed up to half marathon when I was not able to run one. I signed up to half Ironman when I was not able to finish one. Rod, I'm struggling with this thing internally myself, but if I hadn't started where I was, I wouldn't be where I am.
Austra, what has been your biggest lesson from podcasting?
I think one of the lessons for me has been learning about how many layers there are to communication, where it's not just and I think another one to that is putting yourself out there and being more vulnerable and more curious, because I think rarely you will find podcasts that you will enjoy where the host is all about themselves and they don't really pay attention to the guest, or kind of give guests the space to share like their wisdom, their expertise, their knowledge, or doesn't make the guest feel like not necessarily like safe, but like they can freely kind of express themselves. And I think the other one for me with putting myself out there was, I think it just reflecting on my journey at the beginning, I would be just focused on the guest, nothing about me. I can't share anything about me. But a lot of it was coming from kind of that shame of being seen, especially having certain parts of me seen that I didn't want others to see, kind of thing. And throughout the years, as I work more on myself, my relationship with myself, and just in general improve myself, that's where I see that it affects me less and less, and I can be more kind of my authentic self. And that's really what people connect with, is you being real. We connect with realness. We don't connect with perfection because we know that we are not perfect. So I'd say those probably are the ones that come to me right now.
Yeah, the last part is definitely something I had to go through myself, especially at the beginning. I always had the perfect plan of the talk. I planned everything a question in the right order, but slowly it became this natural thing, just a curiosity, like you said before, of getting to understand this person and to really find the answers that you as a person want, you as a podcaster want, but also that the answers that your community wants to hear. I think finding this balance.
That's actually the other interesting part of it that came to me, even with layers to that, because you can just sit and answer questions that you have written down and you just jump from question to question. But also there's like, and I notice it every time when I'm on the break from podcasting and I get back to it, because there's so many layers, where one of them is I actually have to listen to what you're saying. So I actually have to be
Mhm.
present to what you're saying, but also at the same time, I need to think ahead of navigating the conversation so that it sounds and feels natural, like it's in a flow, because I don't like to just cut off one topic and we just move on to the next one. It doesn't feel kind of organic. And then third one, as I think of where to navigate conversation, how to get the best out of it, I have to think about the audience. What is the person listening asking right now that I, as a voice of them, can ask to the person that is on the podcast to get the information out of the guest that they could benefit from? So there's many things that you're doing at the same time, and you have to formulate your own thoughts and be present in a conversation. So I think that's something that I find fascinating, not just podcasting, but communication in general, how many nuances there are and how many layers you can uncover with like improving that skill set.
And now comparing your first episode ever with your last episode, let's say, what would you say is the one system or the one technique that gradually improved your podcasting ability, but also your curiosity and the way you structure your questions and structure your episodes?
I think there was much more fear in the first one and much more caring what others think or how I would be perceived, and less of that ownership of I am who I am, and showing up more as myself and sharing more of me, and also I think not overthinking it, just be present. And I'm not afraid of any like mess ups or any mistakes or saying the wrong thing. I'm always focused on just being present with the person, being kind, being making them look good, and not overcomplicating things. I wouldn't say the structure or system has changed much. Well, it depends on which podcast. Chase the Impossible, not much has changed. Where I don't show up with this like plan of topics that I want to cover. Usually I have like notes of like few key things we could cover, or I would go, let's say if that's somebody who has a podcast, I will listen podcast, I will take some notes of something that I find interesting that we might bring up, but a lot of times we don't even touch on those topics because I'm showing up with kind of going into that conversation, and I kind of feel like one of the gifts of podcasting is actually having conversations when you're present, because when you have guests on, none of us are on a phone. We don't get distracted. We both are actually present. And I feel like more people should start podcasts or do podcasts just to have conversations where you're actually present with the person. And you will be surprised how much you can connect with a person, how much you can learn from them, and also how it doesn't have to be this hard thing where you overthink or you think too much ahead. Just be in the moment. And big one for me is like I always have a notebook. So for me, instead of now listening to you speaking and I'm just like circling in my mind the question that I want to ask, I will write down in a couple of words topic that I want to get back to. And that's like a trigger word for me to kind of bring it up. And I know what I mean by that. So I don't have to just stay in my mind. But I would say that the biggest thing is just like I have become more comfortable being myself, and also more comfortable in my, and it comes with reps, really just having good conversation, good question, making the guest feel comfortable. Where with wisdom and action, every guest that I have on, we have never talked before. We literally jump on the recording and there's like 5-7 minutes to build like rapport and connection, and then we get into the conversation, and nobody has felt, or I haven't perceived them as feeling like very uncomfortable with me. Maybe it's their first recording, so they might be kind of like a bit anxious. But in general, I think it's just that skill set of making the other person more comfortable being themselves, which comes back to me being comfortable with being myself. So it's kind of like we mirror each other.
Definitely. The overthinking part is something that stuck to me because when I look at my first episode, it was fully planned out, but yeah, I forgot to use the right microphone, and at the end, it all sounded horribly.
Yeah.
So one thing to overcome this overthinking part for me was having always one thing that I improved from the last episode, and gradually having built this foundation in which I now have the opportunity to just experiment. Sometimes I go into an episode without any notes. Other times I have a fun part where I ask bullet questions or have something prepared where the guests interact with me. And I think just building this foundation, like you said earlier, through the reps is something a lot of us as podcasters have to go through.
Yeah, I agree. 100%.
And there's a fun statistic that half of the podcasts in the world end before the third episode, which is a sad thing and maybe a question to you to a way to build up this reservoir of guests that a person can go back to. How are your systems there? Do you have a special way of going to people or asking guests to refer other guests?
So it actually is a bit different with each of the podcasts that I'm doing.
Yes.
With Chase the Impossible, I'm looking like I have shifted kind of who I want to get on. So it's like a lot of young, ambitious people. And a lot of them, either I would get somebody, refer somebody to me. I would still ask my guest if they know somebody who would be like a good match. Or as I'm scrolling through like Instagram, I literally have a playlist on my phone that is CTI guests, like Chase the Impossible guests, that I want to reach out to and invite on. Based on something that spoke to me from that content, that I could feel that I would really enjoy this conversation. It's kind of approach Chase Impossible more where the target audience really is like people like me, like 5 years ago when I was very ambitious, very like driven, and I would feel misunderstood, alone, and like I didn't really feel like I could find my tribe or people that would get me. But also I want to get on people that can share different struggles that I have been on or have gone through, and we can kind of learn from each other, and also people listening can feel less alone, more understood, or just like the main goal is to connect and also get better, because there's so many ways in which our environment is not serving us to be our best selves. It's in some ways even working against us becoming better. So with that one, it's a bit more like organic, and it's more me kind of following my kind of going with the flow. Oh, this person looks cool. Let's reach out, see what they say. And with Wisdom in Action, initially I made a post that I'm looking for guests even before the podcast was like first episode recorded. And I had over 200 people submit applications. So I had over 500 people leave comments that they're interested to come on. And then from those, I had 200 people fill out the application. So I went through applications, selected the guests that were aligned and felt like the right match. And then every best guest that I would have on, I would always ask them, hey, do you know anybody else who could be a good person to have on? And through that, it's like if most of the guests, they have at least one person. So naturally, it starts to build up where I can reach out to those people, or they connect me with those people. So I don't have to try to enter their world. But for me, it's like, it has never been an issue to get the guests, but I think it partly depends on the person, because for me, I have gone through a lot of, like a couple of years ago, I started to literally, I was thinking, well, I don't think I'm that good at people. Okay, how do I improve that? Let's reach out to strangers and have conversations. So I literally started to reach out to strangers on Facebook groups, initially Facebook groups, later in LinkedIn, where I was like, hey, and we both are in this group, would you want to connect and jump on a Zoom call? And I did a couple hundred of those calls with people that I don't know. And then with time, you just start to see that, first of all, no matter how big is the resume of the person, everybody is just a human, and we can always connect at some level. And I think with that, I just, again, built that muscle where I don't really have that fear of somebody rejecting me. Like there was one person that I reached out to who, I don't know, he had like 300,000 followers or something. I reached out asking to be on the podcast. He said no. And I was like, that is so cool. He knows who I am because he responded to me.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like, it doesn't really affect me if they say no, because for me, it's like, there's always another person that I can have on, or maybe down the line they might come on. And I also don't necessarily chase people based on their like following size. I look for people that I find interesting, that I feel like they can add value. And partly what I want to do with Wisdom in Action is to give platform for people that are experts in their industries that nobody really knows about, because they don't have this huge following, but at the same time, they are brilliant at what they're doing.
Yeah, you brought up the topic rejection now twice. And I got my first ever rejection to an episode around 6 months ago. I saw someone at an offline event, and we shared like what we're doing, and she was really interested at first. She said like, okay, wow, you're doing this podcast right there. Can I maybe join? And then we connected on Instagram again, and a few days later she said, okay, maybe we need to slow this down. I don't have the capacities, and she was planning to starting her own podcast. And I think the first rejection is always very hard, but ever since I haven't got any. So am I trying too less, or should I maybe take a little bit more risk?
I think it depends, because even like with that one, I wouldn't see it as rejection, because it's like, oh, you don't have capacity. I always ask, I would say like, I'm not in a rush. I'm not planning to stop this in like this month. Like, will you be more open in a couple of months, or maybe like next year, or something like that? Because sometimes people just have, and I have had it a lot of times when I reached out to people to like have calls, they'll tell me, oh, I'm busy. And I'm like, would you still want to connect? Not now, but maybe sometime in the future. So then I can reach out to them like 3 months later, 6 months later, and by then they might actually have the capacity, because I think at some point it might be harder for you to reject others that want to come on, or that feel like a match, or they're like, oh, I want to come on. And I'm like, I don't think you're the best match. But and not from a place where like I want to reject them, but it's just that I learned this from my client. She's very protective of her podcast, her content, everything she does, because she cares for her audience. And it's about getting the best information, the best resources. And it's if you post like once a week, let's say an episode, you have only 50 spots the whole year. So at some point you start to get like, you just have to be selective to bring the best information to your audience. So it's even like, it can be rejection both ways as well. It's not just you being rejected for them not wanting to come on. And even if they say they don't want to come on, you can always ask why. Is it the size of the podcast? Is it the kind of the idea of the podcast? Is it kind of something about me and the way like I communicate, or the kind of the energy that we would have, or something like that, where it always, it feel like we can learn so much from rejection, but we just get to the point where somebody rejects us. I know that I have gone through that, and I probably still have it, where somebody rejects you and you're like, oh, okay, move on, kind of like whatever, instead of being like, I'm curious, like what is it that made you say no? Similar to what I did when I was very young. When I would have conversations with people would open up to me and they would share like very personal stuff with me that I haven't said to anybody, literally within like an hour of us talking. And I would be asking them, what is it, just out of curiosity, like what is it that made you share this thing with me? And you can learn a lot about yourself through asking those questions or trying to understand. And also, one no, it's kind of like not necessarily a challenge, but it's like you can always follow up. If you follow up like 7-10 times, okay, like maybe it's a no for sure. But you might follow up at some point when you're like, hey, I have like 100,000 subscribers. Do you want to come on now? You know? So it really depends on kind of like where the person is. And for me, even like with what you said, I don't know the whole exchange, but if somebody says that they have very high, like they don't have the capacity, they're very, very busy, they want to start their own thing and all these things, for me, it's not a no. It's more like not now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe this person will get a message from me this
Yeah, you can
evening.
just follow up and check in, you know? Even you can ask, like, how is your podcast going? Did you start a podcast?
Now, you already mentioned your two podcasts, Wisdom in Action and Chase Impossible. For both, I want to know how the origin story of both is. When was the moment you said, okay, I want to do this podcast, and when was the moment you said, okay, I want to add another podcast?
Well, Chase Impossible initially was the Committed Growth, and that one I started, it's been recorded in 3 different countries, UK, Latvia, Estonia, and it's been on and off for I think like 6 years now. And initially I started it, I think what happened was, I think it was during COVID, and I had started to outgrow my group of people. So I didn't really have that many people that I would have conversations with, but I loved to have conversations where we just sit down and we talk for hours. Literally 4 hours fly by and you just don't feel time. And I just started to have less and less of those people that I could have conversations with because we just grew apart. And then I had this course mate who, she was a multi-drug resistant tuberculosis survivor. So at the time while we are studying, she's literally going through treatments, fighting for her life. And she's such a petite, small girl. And at the same time, she's so resilient. She didn't complain. I had no idea actually how bad she was and how many like challenges she was going through. And in what kind of, in part, I wanted to show her strength that she had, because I don't think she was able to see that. And what I did is I asked her if she would want to be I think also one of my housemates mentioned to me, we had this interaction where she said to me, have you ever thought, like, you should start a podcast. You have a great voice for it. I'm like, my first thought was, what do you mean I have an accent? That literally was my thought. I can't do a podcast in English. Like, I have accent. And I wouldn't do it in Latvian because at the time I was studying in UK, everything was like English. I would make content in English. So I was like, what do you mean? Like, I have accent, like I can't do, like that's literally my thinking, like I can't do a podcast. But it kind of like stuck with me where I was very afraid to do it. I was like, I would grow up being afraid of being seen. So now you're like putting yourself out there. Like episode 1, you're like on video. And when my course mate agreed to come on, I was like, okay, I guess I'm doing it. So I just got like the laptop camera, mic, headphones, and I was like, okay, I'm guess I'm in podcasting business now. So we just recorded the first episode. And I think the idea was to have conversations with interesting people, because I always enjoy just meeting up, having conversation, and especially with the right people, you feel so energized afterwards. I literally, a lot of times I would be buzzing. I'm like, I don't know what to do with myself. I'm so energized from those conversations. And so that's kind of like the Chase Impossible. The Wisdom in Action, it came more so, initially I was thinking to use it more like lead generation, where I would get on people that I'd want to have as like potential clients. But I feel like it started to expand into something bigger just from the response, because when I posted on some groups that I'm looking for guests, I was hoping to get like, usually there's like maybe 10 responses or 10 comments. So I was like, okay, I'm going to have my first batch of people. I'm going to get it going. But then I had so many people respond and they would tell me, I never comment on these. And I post, like, I commented on yours. And I'm like, and then they would fulfill the application, which also, like, it takes some time to fill it out. It's not just some basic stuff. So that's where, for me, with Wisdom in Action, kind of the idea there is when I was doing networking, I started to see this pattern where there's a lot of what I call wannabe experts, where they pretend that they're experts, but they're not really the expert. And nowadays, it's very easy to pretend that you know what you're talking about online. And then there were people that I call real experts. They actually have lived it. They have literally decades of experience, and they can help you with the whatever is the problem within the area in which they have the expertise. And with them, at the same time, they didn't grow up with technology. So they're not as tech savvy. They're not as comfortable in front of camera. They're not as comfortable with content creation. So a lot of them, they literally are invisible. Nobody knows about them. Nobody sees them, but they are literally the best people to help. And so that's kind of the idea, was to bring those people on and give them like a platform where they can share their expertise, but also create a podcast where kind of the idea is wisdom in action, where it's kind of bridging the gap between knowing and doing, because that's where the wisdom is born. And the goal is to get them on and try to give people as practical advice as we can within whatever is their expertise, so that people can not just consume the information, but actually go and do something with it. And they get the information from somebody who has tested this over time and have lived it. And also on the name for Chase the Impossible, that came to me, I think it was like within the last couple of years when I started to do the endurance stuff, because that was my impossible. I think it was like 5-7 years ago when I was in UK. I went through a personal training course, and I made like one of the guys there, I made him Ironman program. And I remember at the time I was thinking, oh, I would love to do it, but I can't run. I had this belief that I just can't run long distances. I'm very bad at it. And I didn't even try for 7 years, 5-7 years. I didn't even consider signing up, because I was like, well, I just can't do it. So why would I even think about it? And then I literally watched the movie Brittany Runs a Marathon. And I was like, well, if she can do it, maybe I can. It's kind of like where it started for me. And then I started to go on this journey, and I ended up like having, like, now I have finished like 5 half marathons, half Ironman, original marathon distance in Athens, where the idea is you identify what you think is impossible for you. And it doesn't have to be, it doesn't matter if it's something huge, something small, like in comparison to others, whatever feels big for you or impossible for you. Like one lady said to me, for her, it was driving on a highway. It's very scary for her. And I will tell her, like, that's your impossible. Like, own it and don't don't kind of diminish it as something that is like, oh, like, it's because it's yours and it's yours to chase and it's your experience. So it's the idea is identify what's your impossible and go and chase it. And along the way, you might end up proving yourself wrong about something that you thought is true about yourself.
Super cool how you basically started the one from this random interaction with this person, and the other one being a more planned approach and ending up booming with the first ever face-off application, or where you shared the first post. A short story for me, I used to be a very religious listener to the Diary of a CEO.
Mm-hmm.
So I always had it while I was running, while I was in the gym, while I was taking a train. And then one day, a good friend of mine, we had a connection call. I used to have a lot of connection calls in that time. And the call ended, and I still had a lot of questions left. So I said, Julian, I still have so many more questions. Can you maybe answer them? And then he responded with, okay, do you think others would also benefit from me answering these questions? And I said yes. And 2 weeks later, I did my first ever episode where I used the wrong microphone, but it was definitely something that was always in the back of my mind, because I was listening to the Diary of the CEO almost every week. Yeah, this is how I started. And I really liked you saying that you had a conversation with interesting people, because that's the whole premise of my podcast too. Just taking people that I cross or that I meet at a crossroad in life, who I find interesting and who I want to have a conversation with. And it's funny how somehow every time I think that I don't have any guests left, a new door opens with so many more guests that I can podcast. It first started with me being on Twitter. Then a good friend of mine, the Julian guy, created a group of 27 coaches, which means 27 new human beings that I can podcast. Now I'm involved in offline communities, and there you basically have the whole world as a possible podcast guest. Yeah, around Chase the Impossible, I have one more question. Is there a filter in who you're podcasting at the end? So are there always people who overcame or are overcoming something huge in their life, or do you go more intuitively like I do with people you genuinely find interesting in whatever they're doing or whatever you had a conversation with?
I think the general theme, because I only recently started to get on like younger people. Before I would have like experts on and we would talk about different topics. I think I'm still gonna do that on topics that are relevant to the audience, or like the age group. But I think the overall theme is kind of for people that are high achievers. They want to have like they want to get more out of life. They're putting in the work, and there's a lot of things in which like we're doing good job, but also like you can make so many mistakes where you overwork or you neglect other areas, and like there's many things where it's kind of like when I click with somebody and I feel like we are aligned on some aspect, I will invite them on. Like for example, and with this lady, we're gonna have literally monthly. Now we're gonna go on each other's podcast because we connected so well. Julia Fordlipa, if I remember her surname right. Where initially I was connected with her through a connection of mine. He said that we need to connect. I myself play amateur league basketball. I'm really into sports and things like that. She's working with 2 NBA athletes as a nutritionist for them. And we connected. We had our, I think we had the intro call, or maybe we already went straight into the recording for her podcast. And we really connected where in the middle of the conversation, I'm like, are we becoming friends now? Like, it feels like we're so aligned and so similar. Where afterwards I was like, come on my podcast as well. Like, I feel like you can add a lot of value. And she's very like driven, ambitious, and so we had a conversation, and then we were like, let's do it as a monthly thing, because there's so many topics that we could cover in like every episode, and we just kind of jump between each other's podcasts. And then there was like, another example would be one guy that I connected with just like networking, and he was very interesting because like he's in his early 30s and he's working a job that he loves and he's very great at. He's making very good money. He takes care of his like whole family. And I said to him, would you want to come on and talk about it, that you don't have to start a business? There's this there's this message you have, everybody needs to be entrepreneur, everybody needs to start a business. I want to talk to you about how you don't have to do that if you don't want to, or if it's not what you like feel driven to do. And we had great conversation with him. We literally touched on it only last 15 minutes, but the conversation was like very, very good. And that's where like I had one lady who is an actress. So she's kind of doing coaching, but at the same time, she's trying to build her like actress career. So I have had different people, but I would say that the general theme is people that are very driven, very ambitious, hard workers, and they want to do also some good in the world. They want to have like positive impact. And usually when I see some content or I have a call or connect with somebody, I can pretty quickly sense who that is, because it's also not something you can fake. You can't fake years of self-growth, self-development, working on yourself or your skill set or whatever it is that you have worked on. You just can't fake it. And then there's some people that I would see, I would feel like I want to get some of the people from my life. I want to get my basketball coach on. That will be like I'm planting seeds. But that, I feel like that would be such a fun conversation. And I had my friend on when we had, I think it was like we broke it up in 3 episodes talking about my half Ironman journey. So she was kind of helping me navigate that, like sharing that story, because she saw everything. So it was interesting to see what was her perspective, what was my perspective. And I learned a lot just from that conversation. So in general, it's more it kind of feels like this is something that I want to contribute and I want to do as a hobby that is meaningful to me. So I want to get on people that I just feel like I would enjoy having conversation with them and learn from them. But also if I learn from them, because I am me 5 years ago, that is the audience. That is the person that I want to listen to the show. They will enjoy it as well.
Hmm.
So it's kind of like filtering through me.
Yes, exactly the same for me. And you mentioned a few guests you wanted to have on a podcast. Have you
Mhm.
ever created like a list of people you want to podcast?
I
Like,
don't have a list.
okay,
You mean like dream guests?
yes, I did it like a few months ago. I said like, okay, I only have 10 spots or 10 people I want to podcast before I die. Which 10 people are there? And it's
What are
funny how your
yours?
mind drifts and then it comes back, then you have too many, then you have to cut a few people.
What are some of your like top ones that you would want to have on?
Oh, Rick Rubin is definitely up there. The guy who wrote The Creative Act, who has a podcast himself, which I only recently listened to. Then a few of my favorite football coaches, like Vincent Kompany. He would be
Mhm.
like just the aura of this person and the way he talks to his players is just something that I think everyone would benefit from. Parents, leaders, other coaches on the field, and people who are
Mhm.
coaching online. So yeah, people revolving around that, people who are doing great stuff, who are exceptionally well in what they're doing, but which would also benefit a lot of different people.
Mhm.
So these are two examples, and I don't want to go too much into the other ones. Yeah, I kind of lost the point there, but I wrote a few other things I wanted to ask about your other podcast.
Yeah, go ahead.
Information and doing, that's something I myself often struggle with. I give people, or through the talk, I share a lot of information. People share their story, I share my story. And at the end, oftentimes you get the essence from the talk by listening to all of it and taking the nudges that you want. How do you at the end shift it towards something actionable that people can do?
I don't do that. I don't do it where we have conversation at the end there's a summary because I feel like for me during there was this one, I think it was like 3 week challenge I did where I'll be offline every day until 8 p.m. No music, no podcast, no social media unless it's work related. So like it was just full on silence. And one day I was walking and I was thinking because I was thinking what kind of content I would want to create more of. And I would think that short form content when I'm scrolling, it doesn't stick with me. That information doesn't stick with me. I will save it, but I will never get back to it. So I
Mm-hmm.
just scroll and I just save information I will never get back to. But at the same time, what has been very powerful for me has been the podcasts. And I was thinking why? Because a lot of them, they're not structured. They're not like a lecture that you listen to. Unless it's like Huberman Lab or something along those lines. And then I started to think that a lot of it is through storytelling. You're learning a lot because you can kind of relate better. And also in my experience with other people that I have talked to, not just podcasts, but in general, there's difference when you read a book. Like you will remember stuff, you will get some concepts, but then you have to think how you can now apply it to life or break it down or find a way to kind of make it from information to actually something you apply. Where I think with conversation, there's something about it where, like, let's say I reach out to some mentor with something that I'm frustrated about. Sometimes they literally tell me one or two sentences, and I'm like, okay. So it's kind of like putting things in perspective where I feel that whoever is listening, if the topic is relevant to them, if something that the guest says or something that we touch on clicks for them, that's the win. And that's what I focus on throughout the conversation is when they explain something. I don't know, let's say somebody says, there was like one person who said that they went through this like very challenging like 7 year period, and they kind of like casually mentioned it and went on with telling their story, and I'm like, let's stop there because that's 7 years. Let's kind of unpack that. How did you go through that? What helped you to keep going? And I would think about somebody who is in the space that they might have been. What are the questions that this person is having right now? How do I keep going? I feel so stuck. Nobody gets me. And and I kind of go from perspective of thinking if, because that person that I'm talking to, they're not in that place anymore, but they can still kind of relate to that place because they have been there. So they have perspective looking back. So now I think about somebody who's actually in this space. What do they think? What do they feel? What are the objectives that they say? Because a lot of times people are like, easy for you to say. And that's when I think about it. Okay, what would be a question that would help to address that objective, or kind of the negative thought that the person might have listening to this that could be practical insight for that person listening? Or I would ask, like, what is something that you did that helped you overcome this, or keep going, or not to quit? And through that, that's where people can get those insights that it's on you to interpret it the way you want, but I'm doing my best to kind of open the doors for you that you can go in. And I try to go a bit more in depth with follow-up questions and trying to kind of discuss some nuances or some things that I could see for people might be like easy for you to say, but for me it's this and that. And then I would say, what would you say to person who is listening to this and now they think this? And then they give the answer, and it might resonate with that person. It might connect with them. It might give them some insight that can lead to some behavior change, because it's very like that's the big challenge, is changing somebody's behavior remotely, not even knowing who's listening. It is a challenge, but it's kind of how I approach it. I don't focus on collecting the checklist and then give it at the end, because we have all that online everywhere anyways.
Yes, the first thing you said, I think, combined it so perfectly. It's always the story, the way people went through a challenge, that is oftentimes so resonating. And when I think about, this is my story with fitness, I used to always listen to what my doctor said, the physiotherapist, during my recovery, etc. But once I got to a point where I was recovered from my car accident, I got a bit older, and now I'm right at a stage where I can really build a body that I want to live in. Then I had the option to either go to the doctor again, go to the supposedly expert who learned the theory, who can name me every single thing about how to train this, how to train that. Or I can go to the gym bro next door who actually has the body that I want, who has the story, who has the experience. And I think we are all naturally drifting more towards an economy and a society where we don't really need the theory experts more, but more the life experts. And I think this is something you are really expressing through your Wisdom in Action podcast, people who have years of experience, who've gone through the struggles, who've gone through the ups and downs, and can really share it from their perspective.
Yeah, it's for me it was a big lesson, because I spent a good 7 years like reading all the books and all that, and I was the know-it-all. I can tell you exactly what you need to do with life, but I'm not doing it myself. So I was in that what I call feel good productivity. You're productive, you do like some habits or things like that, but it's not fully contributing towards you working and addressing things that you need to do, and that's where the real discomfort comes from, because it's just that assumption that it's, and I recently like started to work on like one video about how self-development is like, it actually can do you more harm than good, because now you consume all this content, now you see all the things you need to work on and you don't have time, and now you compare yourself with somebody else, and there's another thing that you need to do, where now you start to create this like unrealistic expectation of yourself, where a lot of times you actually end up being overwhelmed by it all, where you do nothing. Where you might actually be better if you didn't consume anything. You identify one area you want to work on and you take the first step to work on it. And you just keep doing it. You build like tolerance to do more, and then you can do more, and you just keep going from there. Instead of, I need to learn more so that I feel ready to start. You will never feel ready to start something you never did. So you just need to take the step. And sometimes it helps to consume less and actually go do something. That's where you will learn the most.
Yeah, I used to be at the same place where I got my dopamine from actually gathering the knowledge, but not really applying it. And at the beginning of this year, I actually switched from these non-fictional books to more fictional books, just in order to have a mental model when I think about a transformation. Because I always used to read I can look at my shelf and I see Atomic Habits, I see Think and Grow Rich, I can see all these books that are supposed to like create miracles, but at the end they're just, or they are only effective if you actually do the action. And I think only a fraction of people who are reading it actually get something from it. But with stories, you are not expecting anything except that you gain a new perspective on a topic from a character's perspective. And yeah, I've been reading a few books this year. I've read a few books, and I also started to watch movies from that lens, from gaining a perspective to a topic, to a transformation, and that definitely helped me a lot.
I think you can even apply it to nonfiction as well, because that's like right now for me, I read way less than I did before because now I look at books like manuals. I read a book, it says you need to do something, go and do it instead of keep reading. Or I would even journal on it, or I would think on it, or I would kind of come up with some kind of challenge that I could do to actually apply the lesson, where I feel like instead of consuming more, it's consume in small dose, go and apply, and then come back, and you will have also different perspective with which you are learning and reading the book, because now you read it with some kind of context from life, not just from what you have built within your head. You actually went and you did it. And now let's say with, I don't know, sales, you read about what you need to do on a call, and you can know it all, but it doesn't mean you can actually do it. And then when you jump on a call, you're like you freeze or something, or you start to rush, or you do something. Then it's like, okay, now I have perspective. Let's go back and read kind of what to do when that happens, or what are some of things I need to remind myself, or how to control my state, or things like that. And that's where you actually learn. It's kind of that. Now I'm looking for. I focus less on how many books I finish and more on how much I actually apply from the book. And I kind of measure how much I enjoy, don't enjoy the book based on how much I can actually bring to my life, things from the book, or how much it applies to some insights that I can get that actually can manifest in reality, not just in kind of mental concept.
Yeah, and one perspective I would like to ask you is the challenge you made, the 3 weeks, let's call it dopamine challenge. I myself, I went through a similar journey. I also wanted to, or maybe not with the same intention, but I just wanted to break free from my phone. And from that, I tried it all for 5 years, haven't got any better at it. And then I did something similar to you. I call it Sunday detoxing, which is just taking one Sunday for 1 month. So every Sunday for a month. And for this one day, from waking up until going to bed, I'm not using my phone. I'm not using my laptop. I'm not eating. I'm not that social, in order to get all my dopamine receptors to ground zero, to really reset it all. And of course, after the first time on Monday, it was 5 a.m. I just got up and immediately started scrolling. But over time, it got better and better, and it started to spread throughout the week. And doing this for 3 weeks straight for a smaller time period, not like the whole day. What are some things that you notice for yourself that changed the way you interact with technology and also dopamine in general?
Well, there was a lot, because it felt very late, because like 8 p.m. at the time I was also waking up at 4. So I would go to sleep like 9, 10, sometimes 8 if I was very tired. So literally the whole day I'm just like, okay, no phone. And initially, of course, you can't wait until you can check your phone and kind of do all the scrolling and everything. But then there was like several things that happened where, and it was already within the first week, I started to, one was realization of, it feels good to just think. I have space to think. I'm on the bus, I'm in the store, I'm walking, there's nothing. I'm just thinking. And I think there was this one moment when I wanted to, because the only thing that I would listen is, because this challenge is in one app that I'm in, where you can come up with like, or it gives you different kind of challenges. I would only listen to episodes that are within that app, within the podcast in the app. And there was this one day when I was like, oh, I want to put it on. And then I was like, I think my headphones weren't connected or something. And I was like, you know what? It's fine. Like, and then I realized that a lot of times what I would do, and I think many people do this, especially the ones that are in self-development, I would distract myself from the actual self-development with consuming
Mm-hmm.
self-development. So
Yes.
you're not actually living self-development, you're just consuming it. You're learning about it, you're trying to understand it. Then also the other thing was I started to notice, one, how much time you have. Then with time it started to get boring to even like scroll. So whenever I'm still, whenever like every morning I go to cafe. On the bus, I'm reading a book. I don't really sit on my phone, or if I'm on phone, it's purely communication, or I'm just kind of planning out the day or taking some notes or something like that. But majority of the time, I'm just reading a book, which I didn't do before. And I did use like the digital book, but now I'm just reading my physical book. And I think in general it just has become like much less interesting to do the scrolling or just distract myself from myself. It felt so good to connect with myself, and I get so much done. The hardest were the weekends, because on the weekend it's like, oh, the ones to like watch a movie. Nope, like you can't do that. You have to wait until 8, and even then, like I have to go to sleep in like less than an hour. And with that one, it was very interesting because my weekend started to become very productive. I just started to edit my podcasts in the evenings because I was like, well, I have nothing else to do anyways. So I might as well. So it's kind of like the alternative to where, let's say, when you entertain yourself with like social media or consuming content or stuff like that, the alternative of doing something that might be productive, like in my case, in those weekends mostly it was editing podcasts. I would not want to do that. I would justify, I'm gonna do it tomorrow. Now I was like, I have nothing else to do anyways, so I might as well. And I enjoy the episodes. So as I'm going through them, I'm like, that's a good point. And I'm actually more present as I'm doing it because I don't distract myself with like the phone in the middle of the work. And so I would say like it was very, very insightful. And I'm thinking to start something to similar capacity where I'm offline during my work hours. And I can only like check the phone during like my like, I don't know, 30-minute break or something like that. Because I think in general, I do like your idea about one day completely offline, because I think that really helps to, and I think I already started to do something like that. Not necessarily like all screens offline, but I don't work, or I have the freedom to be kind of, I just want to, today, I would put in my calendar, do what you want. There's a spot where it's just do what you want. You want to meet friend? Go meet friend. You want to watch a movie? Watch movie. You want to work? You can work as well. But do what you want. It's not that you have to do something. And I think it's important to have that space where you like kind of switch things off and you're more present. You spend more time with people. You connect with others, with yourself, with nature. And you will be surprised how much it helps with regulating yourself and how much that regulation helps you to go into the next week or the next day. And it just helps so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And yeah, I think it would be interesting for me to try your version of it, of cutting it over for an extended period of time. But what I noticed throughout the talk is the way you do things when your mind says that you should do it. For example, or this is something that my best friend and I notice for ourselves as well, that ever since we started with sports, with running, with training, we build a respect to ourselves to actually do the stuff that actually brings us forward in life. So now I want to switch the topic more towards the everything around sports. I see a few medals in the background. So
Yeah.
can you maybe give us a bird eye view of what you're doing to keep yourself active?
Right now, I have started 75 hard. So that's one thing that I try to do every year. Are you familiar with 75 hard?
Yes, a
Okay,
good
so
friend of
so
mine did it once.
yeah, so like that's what I do. Usually try to do it like every year, and I have done it I think 4 times, or like finished it 4 times. This year I have failed a couple of times, but I have finished over 75 days total anyways. So I'm still progressing, but that I usually try to use it when I have busy seasons to make sure I don't neglect myself and I keep kind of just showing up for myself, and I check all the boxes that make sure that I'm staying healthy and I don't move backwards. For me, sports is like huge part of my life. Like I have, like right now we just it ended in May, the season. Like I play amateur league basketball. Then also now I do a bit less endurance, but a couple of weeks ago I did the half marathon, and a lot of what I do now is kind of, I don't necessarily chase anything more than just consistency, really. That's where I improve anyways. So it's mainly going for like a walk. I'm doing in the morning. There's one Caroline Gervin, I think is her name, on YouTube. She has such good programs on YouTube. I just put on like I think she has, I don't know, 4 or 5 50-day programs. You just need dumbbells. Sometimes you need some bands or something. So I just do that every single day. Like today before this, I did the heat workout and it was tough. Then recently I started to do Pilates. So I do that once in a while. I don't go to gym right now. So I just do it at home. What else do I do? I think in general, a lot of it is last 2.5 years, it has been big kind of journey in fitness and health. And now I'm in a place where it has become a lifestyle where I feel weird if I don't move, if I don't exercise, and it helps me feel great, and I feel strong, and especially when you start to also see results, and you just feel stronger, healthier. I think the other one that I recently started was mobility work, just working on like mobility and improving that. There's one lady on Instagram, Zuba Lenok, I think is her nickname or whatever. She's very, very good. Like I got her program. I'm just going through it and I'm learning a lot as I'm going through it. So I would say like a lot of it is just partly whatever I feel like doing in the moment, but also I'm more in the place where I just focus on having some kind of routine. Not where I'm stuck doing exactly the same. That's where Caroline workouts help because they keep changing all the time. And but I don't have to think about it. So I'm trying to make it as kind of effortless I have been through all the put together my own program and everything and like track everything. Like that's why now I don't really have the watch anymore. I don't wear it. And my brother keeps asking me like, oh, I don't see like your workouts that you're doing. And I'll tell him like, I want to track some other areas, but right now I don't want to focus necessarily on like focusing too much on performance. I did fail that, but I was tracking every day what I was eating for 340 something days, so almost a year. But now I'm in a place where I feel I want to experiment with let's do like intuitive eating, because like once you track for that long, you have very good sense of how much you eat, how much is in what, and so with that one, I'm also just like right now I will look at different interesting recipes I could try and kind of just do that. And I think in general it's finding for me what sports I do usually depends on what do I feel like doing right now, what feels like either good challenge or what do I feel drawn to right now, and just going with that. And having people that you can do it with really helps because it makes it more fun. It feels less like you're, I don't know, fighting with yourself. But I also enjoy that solitude where I have time with myself and I can kind of just enjoy that moment when I first thing in the morning I wake up, I do my workout, and then by the time I start working, I have put myself first. I have taken care of myself. And that's where that what you said, that self-respect, I respect myself more, I have more confidence, I have more self-trust, and I treat myself differently as a result.
Now you showed more of the late phases of this whole sports thing, respecting yourself thing. But at the beginning, you mentioned that you haven't registered to these programs because you thought that it was impossible. So could you maybe bring us more towards this part of the story where you actually did the first step of respecting yourself and doing the work in order to make them possible?
Yeah, I had reflected on it where even things that I'm doing now or the place that I'm in when it comes to the fitness and health, like it didn't even register as possibility. It's like I didn't plan to finish marathon or like half Ironman, like or like do Pilates or something like that. Basketball. So there's none of it I saw coming. The only thing that I knew is I don't like where I'm at because I had gained weight. I would struggle with like binge eating for I don't know since I was like 11 years old, something like that. There's a lot of shame you have as well because you can't hide your body. People see. So with that, also what comes is there's a lot of isolation because you don't want to face that shame. You don't want to feel that shame. So I would say like the first year, a lot of it was just me trying to do it myself in isolation and just and try to push through. Then I think I started to learn. I think I started to work with a client who has podcast on healing. So I'm learning a lot about healing. And then I start to see that, oh, there's things that I need to work on. Or I would even like reflect on the fact that maybe there's something that I haven't learned being in this body, kind of like being overweight, being out of shape. There's something that I have to learn that I haven't learned yet. And then I started to think, okay, what could it be? One of the things was that instead of hiding away, you need to get comfortable showing up, being the way you are, regardless of how you feel. And I have had some people in my life who now are going through that journey and like they will tell me, you have no idea how it is when I feel so ashamed that I can't even go to the store. And I will tell them, like, I know. Like, I know how it is. Like, it's very, very, that's why for me it was interesting last half marathon a couple of weeks ago, because that was the distance that I ran as first distance. And I was comparing the pictures between pictures now and pictures then. And I would be like, I have no idea how she did it. Like I was proper out of shape. I shouldn't run. And at the same time, and once I finished, like everything from like neck down was in pain, full on pain. And I finished second to last. There was me and another guy at the end, just like dying. But if I hadn't started where I was, I wouldn't be where I am. So I think a lot of it is kind of, I can't say that I trusted the process necessarily, because there's so much pain that you go through. There's so much, like, you can't just snap your fingers and now you're like looking great. You have to go through daily decisions. Today, I choose one healthy meal, and next meal, I choose healthy. And then maybe in the evening, you're so stressed and anxious that you end up eating very badly. And now you have this like guilt, shame, everything about it. And you have to wake up the next day and you have to do the whole thing all over again. And you have to do the exercise, especially like once you start exercise, when you start from a point where you're like very out of shape. And for me, I have background in sports. So I'm used to like kind of, usually I would be like pretty strong and all that. But I wouldn't have that. I would walk up the stairs and I'm like I'm so tired. Like, and I would be like, this is so embarrassing. Somebody, and I was working also mindset coach, teaching people about mindset. And I'm like, I feel like a fraud. I'm struggling with this thing internally myself. And now I'm going helping others. Like it didn't feel right. But at the same time, like that would be the journey that I was on. And going through that journey, I have had several times that I would think about what would happen if I didn't get off track. Because a lot of it was like related to kind of stresses in life or being like in some capacity in like survival mode and all these things where I did not have the tools, I did not have the resilience, the self-compassion and the ability to even like reach out to people, ask for help and let others in at that stage. So even looking back, I'm like, whoa. I had this actually the other day. I was doing priming, Tony Robbins priming. And one of the tasks there is that you need to think and visualize 3 moments from your life that you're grateful for. And I visualized this one moment when I was kind of like going through, it wasn't necessarily like a breakup, but kind of like just kind of going separate ways. And I just reached out to people in my life. I'm like, hey, this happened. And everybody's like instantly responding to me, supporting me. Like my brother called me. And I was, as I was visualizing it, I was like, wow, the people I have in my life now, the support system that I have. There was a time when I would try to work on things, improve things, where I was alone. There was nobody. And it's not that there was nobody. I didn't know how to ask for help, how to reach out. There was so much shame that it felt like if I would ask them, I would admit something to myself that I didn't want to admit, or they would see something that I didn't want them to see. So I think big lesson there was don't try to do everything alone. Like you will make it much harder, and it adds so much pain, and it feels like it's very painful to reach out for help or let somebody in, but that's actually where your growth, your healing, your progress actually starts. Is you don't have to walk it alone. So that's where I think having people that you have in your life that can support you, that you can, and I still struggle with this because I'm a huge helper, but receiving help, asking for help, I'm like, oh, I don't know, like maybe I can try it. Or if I would ask for help initially, I would be like, oh, can you help me with this? But you don't have to. Like, you know, it's kind of like you don't want to be, I don't know, a burden or something. So there's like a lot of lessons that I have learned, but I'm glad I did it the way I did, because I can relate to people that are going through those struggles, that have those certain like pains or challenges, or like you fail more than you think. The one decision not to eat well, one decision to skip workout, you fail so many times, but what matters is that you keep getting up, you keep going, you keep showing up, and I don't think trust the process is the answer, because I didn't trust it. I was focused on where I'm not. So I was kind of like, I just don't like where I am, so I just need to keep trying. Like I actually don't know what kept me going, because I was not in a good like mental space, because you can't really be into good of a mental space, especially when you're physically also not in a good like space. But I think that looking back, it's just like I'm very proud of that version of me that started when she was not ready. And that's the one concept that I talk about: commit before you're ready. I signed up to half marathon when I was not able to run one. I signed up to half Ironman when I was not able to finish one. I barely finished half marathon, and that's what you finish half Ironman with. So I think that that's where, for me, what kept me going partly was my curiosity and my drive, and kind of that internal just wanting, or nothing really felt like an option really. I just had to keep trying. But it definitely took, I think the other advice there I could add is don't focus on timelines. Don't set like, oh, I bet this stage I need to be at this, I don't know, weight, or I need to be at this like body fat or whatever. Forget the timelines. Just focus on today, making progress towards whatever you need to do, make good decisions, be proud of yourself. Next day, reset, start over. Just focus on today. Otherwise, you're like, oh, I'm not there yet. Now you start to feel bad, and you start to go the other route again. But yeah, there's more lessons that I can explain in a couple of minutes.
Yeah, I was actually preparing my last question, which would be, do you have any tips for running a marathon? But you basically combine it all in such an amazing way by saying, okay, just wake up and do the thing that is right. And it's as simple as that. And when I look at the whiteboard, I created a plan 6 weeks ago, and just seeing how much I ticked off, how many half marathons I ran so far, which are like two, and the first one was the actual race.
Nice.
I'm seeing so much progress, and just having the visuals up there every morning is just something so powerful.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think this is the perfect way to end this talk. Thank you, Austra, for this amazing talk. We covered a lot about podcasting, how to start one, what the mindset behind podcasting is. Then we looked at both of your podcasts, Wisdom in Action and Chase the Impossible, saw what the difference between both are, what the scopes from both are, and what your vision for your guests are. And lastly, which is me personally my favorite part, which was the sports part around, or everything around the mindset, especially of, okay, doing one decision at a time and actually improving that way instead of having this big picture and being overwhelmed by that. So yeah, is there anything you still want to say to your listener?
If you listen this far, thank you. Thank you for listening, and yeah, really just keep going, and trust the process. Connect, go a bit more offline, connect more with yourself, with others. Just have that space, and also just don't forget to have fun.
Nice. Thank you, Astra, and bye.